Welcome to this webinar about TEA supports for the school counseling 80/20 policy. Thank you for being here. Let's get started. This is a QR code to the presentation slides in PDF form. It is best to open the QR code now so that you can click on the PDF link to follow along with this presentation, since I will be sharing lots of linked resources. Consider pausing this webinar for a moment here so that you can access the presentation PDF in the QR code. Let's begin with a brief introduction. My name is Stephanie Lerner, and my role at TEA includes serving as the primary point of contact for Texas school counselors. I develop resources for school counselors, and I conduct trainings to support the effective implementation of comprehensive school counseling programs. Before joining TEA in 2020, I was an elementary and secondary school counselor for 12 years in Central Texas. You can reach me at stephanie.lerner@tea.texas.gov, which is listed on this slide at the second bullet. The objectives for this presentation are to explore the value of counselors spending work time on statutory counseling duties and to identify counseling resources to support the implementation of school counseling statutory requirements with a focus on the 80/20 policy. The 80/20 policy refers to the Texas Education Code 33.006D, which requires school counselors to spend at least 80% of their time on appropriate counseling duties. We will discuss all of this throughout the webinar today. Now, let's turn our attention to the first objective, which is to explore the value of counselors spending work time on statutory counseling duties. So why are we talking about school counselors being able to spend at least 80% of their work time on counseling duties? Why does this matter, and what's the value in it? Well, the value falls into three major buckets: improved student outcomes, optimal student support, and statutory compliance. While you may know all of this value, does the rest of your school staff and community know this? If not, consider sharing the following information with them. The third bullet of statutory compliance is where we'll actually dive into the rule itself, what it says, and why the rule matters. Now, let's explore each bullet in a little bit more detail. Counseling programs can positively impact K-12 student outcomes in the areas of academic achievement, college and career readiness, and personal development. We know that students with greater access to comprehensive school counseling programs have an increased likelihood of academic and behavior success in school. In addition, research shows that comprehensive, data-driven school counseling programs increase student learning outcomes. If you would like more information on these student outcomes, you can review the research document that is titled Empirical Research Studies Supporting the Value of School Counseling, which is listed in the references slide. Students have an increased need for responsive services post-pandemic. This increased need amplifies the importance of school counselors spending at least 80% of their time on counseling duties. At-risk behaviors are increasing for nearly all groups of youth. According to the Texas Statewide Plan for Student Mental Health, TEA reviewed data and interviewed multiple education and mental health stakeholders, identifying learning loss and mental health challenges as the two biggest issues facing students and schools as a result of the pandemic. When school counselors provide counseling services during at least 80% of their work time, students can receive optimal support during this challenging time. Another value of school counselors spending time on counseling duties is that when they do, districts are in compliance with the law. Texas Education Code 33.005 is called Comprehensive School Counseling Programs, and it states that a school counselor shall work with school faculty and staff, students, parents, and the community to implement, plan, and evaluate a comprehensive school counseling program that conforms to the most recent edition of the Texas Model for Comprehensive School Counseling Programs, also known as the Texas Model. The school counselor shall design the program to include 4 main components: a guidance curriculum to help students develop their full educational potential, including the student's objectives and career interests; a responsive services component to intervene on behalf of any student whose immediate personal concerns or problems put the student and their educational, career, personal, or social development at risk; an individual planning system to guide a student as the student plans, monitors, and manages the student's own educational, career, personal, and social development. And then finally, the 4th component, a system support component, which is divided into 2 types of tasks: foundational activities to establish, manage, and evaluate the counseling program, and indirect student services to collaborate with staff, families, and community on behalf of the student and their development. Now, let's take a look at where the 80-20 policy is actually listed in the law. Texas Education Code 33.006 states that the primary responsibility of a school counselor is to counsel students to fully develop each student's academic, career, personal, and social abilities. The 80-20 policy is addressed in subsection D of this statute and states, except as provided by subsection E, the Board of Trustees of each school district shall adopt a policy that requires a school counselor to spend at least 80% of the school counselor's total work time on duties that are components of a counseling program as developed by section 33.005. Let's take a look at 2 other 80-20 subsections. Subsection E specifies that districts must have a policy, no matter the percentage. If they choose a non-80% policy, then they must include the additional information listed here in E 1 through 3 in their district policy. Subsection H states that each school counselor shall annually assess the district's compliance with the policy adopted under subsection D, and on request by the commissioner, provide a written copy of the assessment to the agency on or before the date specified by the commissioner. The commissioner shall adopt rules to implement this subsection. Let's take a look at these rules next. The commissioner's rules concerning counseling public school students' annual assessment of school district compliance is linked in the blue subheading of this slide. These rules implement the statutory requirement for school districts to annually assess compliance with the district policy requiring a school counselor to spend at least 80% of their total work time on duties that are components of a counseling program. The rules require each district school counselor to track and document using a district standardized tracking tool the time spent on work duties performed by the school counselor throughout the school year. The rules also identify the elements that district assessments must include and the documentation to be included in annual requests by TEA for district assessments. So what is the reason for this rule? Well, first, it is required per statute, and we've already talked about that. Second, work time analysis is a crucial professional practice because school counselors need to know how their time is being spent in order to best determine ways to improve program delivery and also identify possible program delivery impediments. How their time is spent needs to be analyzed and shared with important stakeholders. Tracking time and effort is a practice that is used in many fields, and it can be done efficiently. We will address how to track time efficiently in the next section of this presentation. Keep in mind that a comprehensive counseling program described in Texas Education Code 33.005 includes the component of system support under which work time analysis falls. Work time analysis is a necessary and appropriate counseling duty. So consider taking a moment here to pause the webinar, reflect a bit on these 3 questions on the slide here. Or if you're watching this webinar with a colleague or with multiple colleagues, take a minute to talk with them about these 3 questions. Let's turn now to the second objective of this presentation, which is identifying counseling resources to support the implementation of school counseling statutory requirements, of course, with our focus on the 80/20 policy. This slide here provides an overview of all the resources that we'll be covering in this section of the presentation. And so let me start off with the first bullet, and let's take a look at the Texas Model resource. So our most valuable and extensive resource in following school counseling statutory requirements is actually our Texas Model. You can find the Texas Model as a free downloadable in the blue link on the slide. And the model describes best practices for implementing a school counseling program in Texas. It is based on the statutory description of Texas school counseling programs and school counselor duties. The guide begins with an introduction that gives both historical and statutory context. Next, Section 1 provides the school counseling responsibilities. Section 2 explains the program implementation cycle. Section 3 gives step-by-step instructions and workbook boxes. Section 4 has the school counseling role and duties, and it also provides step-by-step instruction and workbook boxes for creating the program design, in addition to the foundation that was created in Section 3. And finally, Section 5 is our guidance curriculum, scope and sequence. You can find Texas Model trainings and materials on the School Counselor Resources slide that's located at the end of this presentation. Another resource that we have related to the 80/20 policy is the Counselor Program Tracking and Data Analysis Report. This resource supports school counselors in developing, monitoring, and organizing the counseling program. School counselors may use this template to monitor how they are allocating time and in which component they are providing services to students. More information and details on this particular resource can be found on page 107 of the Texas Model. You can download a free electronic version of this tracking and data analysis tool by clicking on option 2 in the last bullet on the slide. Option 2 is actually one of the best tools available. This is because it is based on the Texas Model and it aligns with all the aspects of the commissioner's rules. In addition, it includes formulas that run the data numbers for you. As mentioned, districts can choose to use another tool. However, they must carefully align their tool with all parts of the rule. We like to say your tool must match the rule. Another important point to be very cautious with is snapshots or documentation that only reflects certain workdays. The reason for this is that the rule is very clear in defining school counselor work time as the total amount of contracted work time that the school counselor works throughout a school year. Another helpful resource we have are the steps for reassignment of non-counseling duties. They are listed on page 117 of the Texas Model. Basically, in addition to using the tools in the last slide, to determine non-counseling duties and estimate the number of hours spent on duties, administrators and counselors can work together to follow these 4 bulleted steps on the slide, which would be consider if those tasks need to be completed and how they might be accomplished, determine the counseling duties to replace the non-counseling duties and its impact on students, engage in the planning of reassigning non-counseling tasks, and finally, recognize that this process takes time. We also have compiled a list of the most frequently asked questions related to the 80-20 policy. The responses to these questions, there's about 15, 16 questions, and the responses often include a corresponding linked resource to provide further information in detail. You can find them at the blue link on the slide and also on our Counselor Work Time Support Hub, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment. So as I mentioned, we have a Supports for Counselor Work Time Hub on our school counseling webpage, which you can access at the first blue link on this screen or by following the screenshots to navigate our webpage itself. The Support Hub includes various resources such as the various Texas work time analysis tools, district submission examples, an administrator training video, a recorded school counselor leader panel discussion, and more. There are also many helpful counselor work time resources provided by other organizations. So I wanted to mention some of them here. They aren't hyperlinked since they are not TEA resources, but you can put the title of any of these bullets in a search engine and the resource will pop right up. In terms of templates, the American School Counselor Association, also known as ASCA, has a use of time 5-day calculator, and we at TEA even have a slightly modified version of it for Texas. Just email the CAS team in the first bullet for it, if that's something you're interested in taking a look at or using. You can watch a demonstration of how to use ASCA's calculator in the Track Your Time and Share Your Data webinar. At the third bullet, Google Sheets offers a great tool for time tracking. Look for the Smartsheet version if you search for it. All 3 of the books that are listed in the second half of the slide are ASCA publications and have great information, details, and tools related to counselor work time and appropriate duties. The School Counselor National Model Implementation Guide even has an entire use of time section on pages 108 to 127. So at this point, consider taking a moment here to, again, pause the webinar and reflect on these 2 questions. Or if you're watching this webinar with a colleague, take a minute to talk with them about an 80-20 counselor work time action that you could take at your own campus or in your district. So let's review the main topics that we've covered today. We explored the value of counselor spending work time on statutory counseling requirements, and we also identified various resources that are available to support the implementation of school counseling statutory requirements. This slide has our main school counseling trainings and materials that we offer from TEA. The first 3 bolded bullets have various Texas model support tools. The 4th bullet from the bottom has our TEA school counselor webpage link where you can find some additional information on the guidance curriculum in section 5 of the Texas model. And the last bolded bullet links to the Texas School Mental Health website, where you can find both free and low-cost instructional materials for your guidance curriculum. These instructional materials are located in the School Mental Health Best Practices tab of that School Mental Health website. And that brings us to the end of this webinar. Thank you so much for attending. Please reach out to the email on the slide if you have any questions. Thanks so much and have a great day.